Hi everyone, I'm Rosemary, and today I'm going to be painting this ceramic flower with you. Um, there's some dry brushing involved, base coating, and some glitter on the whole flower, which I know everyone loves glitter. So to get started, I want you to make sure that you have your brushes out. Now you have two small brushes in your kits, those of you who picked up the kits from the library. You can get other brushes at Michael's, Amazon, so if you want to get bigger brushes. The brushes will work, they will just take a little bit longer to complete the piece. I use bigger brushes because I'm working to show you how to do this, but you can pause the video and just catch up with me. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to, well, I want to make sure that you have paper towels handy, you have a water bowl, you have paper towels, your brushes, and your paints, okay? The paper towel, we're going to be dry brushing, so we will be taking a lot of color out on the paper towel. All right, so first I want you to base coat the whole entire front of the piece. Not entire. I didn't do the center. Base coat the whole entire front of the flower in the purple. Or if you have other colors, it's what you want to do now. On the back, I did pink. You can do whatever you would like. All right, but I do that after I did the front. All right, so I'm going to base coat the entire flower in the pink, in the purple, except for the center, all the petals. And if you drag your brush across like this, if you can see what I'm doing, you'll get a nice edge there. And then just pull it out and make sure it's smooth. When you dry brush, which is what we're going to be doing on this flower, you will have to be sure that the crevices don't show any white spots. Because when you dry brush and you go against the grain, you go across and you leave your crevices in the base coat color. If you missed any spots and they're white, they will stay like that. So you want to make sure that you have no white spots showing. Now if your paint is thin, sometimes some of the colors are a little thin. If it's thin and you can see through your color, that's okay, because we're going to be putting so much of the pink over it, so it doesn't really matter if you can see through the purple. You just don't want any white spots, because in your crevices especially, your crevices remain the purple as much as possible. And if you have a white spot, it will show. Okay, so the entire flower part, not the center, is being done in the purple. And you see what I'm doing? I'm going around the center first. You can use that square brush that you have, and you put a little paint in your brush and you lay it down, and when it's properly loaded with paint, you can kind of scoop right across. This is what I mean about white spots. I don't know if you could see that. Those two little white spots I have there, that's what you don't want. So you have to make sure you get in there and get those white spots covered. But I'm doing around the center because that's the hardest part to keep it off of where the green is going to go. So I'm doing that first. The green will most likely cover the purple. I don't think you'll have any problem with that. And sometimes it needs two coats, sometimes it needs one coat, but it doesn't matter right now because you're going to be dry brushing both areas, and I'm sure that it will cover, one color will cover another. Okay, so now I did the center part. Okay, and now I'm going to do the rest of the flower. Just pull your color out to the edge and hit the edges. Make sure that you hit the edges. You could do all the flat part first and then go back and do the edges. But always make sure you go back. If you notice when I put it on, I go like this and I may go over here, but then I go back and I pull it, because when you're dry brushing, if you have any ridges in your paint and they dry with those ridges, when you dry brush, it accents all those raised ridges that you would have on there. So you have to always make sure your paint is smooth, and that's before it dries. So I always keep going back and pulling it and making sure it's nice and smooth as the best you can. Okay. This is the easy part of the piece. Not that anything else is that hard. It's a pretty simple piece. And like I always say to you when I do a video, you can choose whatever colors you like. If you have other colors, I guess you could make this into a sunflower. You could start it in brown, in a dark brown, and then dry brush yellows and mustard color and yellows over it. And do your center in a little lighter brown over the dark brown. It's your choice. I only show you how to do it, but your colors are your choice. I'm only able to give you a certain amount of colors in that strip, but you can always go to Michael's and pick up other colors if you wanted to do it differently. Okay. This takes even a little bit longer than going around the center. So I'm trying to make sure that it's nice and smooth. And if you put it on right, you see how fast it dries? I don't have anything on my finger, okay? So it dries very fast. So I'm going to hit the edges. After I'm finished with this top part, I'm going to go around and make sure that all my edges are coated, because I did leave a lot of the purple on my edges mixed with some white dry brushing. I don't have the pink on that area, not too much. Okay, and then once it's dry, when the paint is wet, you will not notice your white spots, but when it dries, you'll notice your white spots. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to just hit all my edges, as I can see all those edges are not done. I'm not even putting more paint in the brush. Whatever's in my, well, I have a big brush. So whatever's in this brush, I'm able to apply enough purple without dipping for more paint, because the brush holds so much paint. Almost done. Now, like I said, you should probably let this dry before you start doing the next step, so you can pause the video and go back to it after you get your base coat on of whatever color you choose to put on there. Yeah, it's going around a long way. Okay. I believe I have just about the whole thing done, all right? So now what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm going to use the same brush to apply the pink. Oh, you know what? Maybe before I do that, I'll use my little smaller brush and I'll do the green in the center while this is drying. Because if you try to dry brush over a color that you just painted, it might lift up the base coat. So it should be a little bit dry. So while that's drying, I'm going to apply the green, the solid green to the middle. Okay, I have a little smaller brush here that I'm doing that with. I mean, this is really a dry brush I'm doing it with. It shouldn't be, but that's what I have in front of me right now. So now I'm putting the dark green on the center, and that's solid. You always have to make sure that you have all your white spots covered with a base coat. Now, I like to dry brush because if you don't dry brush and you have to butt your colors up against each other, like I'm doing here right now, it's not too bad on this piece because this is a flower. But if you had a piece that had a lot of detail and you're trying to paint each section individually without having a base coat underneath it, it's frustrating. You're going back and forth, touching up, going back, going out of the lines. So I prefer always to have a base coat on something. It doesn't always work, but most of the time it does. So when I do a lot of the classes, I'll base coat either in a brown or a gray, and then dry brush my colors over that. And then I don't have to butt my colors right up against each other because the gray or the brown is in the crevices and it looks like an antiquing. It looks like a background color. So you don't have to be perfect butting your colors up against each other. But you see here, where I'm doing two separate colors as base coats, you have to be more perfect with it. Now, I probably could have put the purple on the whole flower, but I decided to do it this way. I could have probably put the purple on the middle too, and just dry brush the green over it. And that would give me a little different look. It wouldn't be wrong, it would just be a little different. Sometimes experimenting gives you new ideas. So don't be afraid to try things. You can always go over it. Just keep your paints nice and smooth and thin, and you won't have any problems going over them. Okay, almost there. Almost there. Now, I didn't put my brush in water the first brush that I used. Now, you have different brushes, so it's going to make a difference, but I'll just explain to you. When I'm using dry brushing brushes, which is mainly for the adults, I don't put them in water until I'm finished painting with them that day. Now, I don't want you to say, I told you not to wash them, and a week later, they're stiff as a board. No, you wash them eventually when you're finished with them. But if you put water in your brush and try to use it to go back and dry brush another area, I could tell immediately that the brush was wet. The colors don't go on the same way. So dry brushing is dry brushing, dry brushes. The brushes must be dry. Okay, so I'm not going to wash this. I'm just going to put it aside, and I'm going to go back to the big brush that I used. I'm going to do some pink. Okay, now I'm just going to wipe out what I have in my brush. And then this is not really a dry brush, but it's stiff enough that I can use it. And I'm going to pick up the pink in the brush and wipe it out on the paper towel. And then I'm going to lightly apply a coat in both directions. And because the purple is in my brush, I'm not going to get a true pink to begin with, but that's okay. That's okay. I'd rather it gradually build up. And I don't know if you could see that. You could see it somewhat, right? But each time you dip in the pink, the color will get more vivid because it will be wiping out the purple out of the brush. Now, can you see a difference between that and what I did before? See, there's more pink in the brush already. Now, I'm using the side of the brush, and it's like in a sweeping motion back and forth, so I don't go in the crevices. If you have too much paint in the brush, you're going to go in the crevices, and you don't want to do that. So this is a sweeping motion back and forth. Now, if you press too hard, if you have too much water in your brush, which is too much paint, it's going to lift up your previous coat. Now, if it lifts it up, just go away from it and let it dry. There's nothing you can do. You just, you have to wait and touch it up either with the purple, or if the pink is covering, you could do it with the pink. Now we're going to do this 2-3 times until you like the effect of how it went on, you like the color. And I go back and overlap and see how it's coming together. Sometimes there's a reflection here. Okay. Every time you dip and you wipe, every time. I start out with a very light hand, and then as I get the feel of how much is in my brush, I can press a little bit harder. Okay, again. Now the first coat looks like nothing. The second and third coat make a big difference. Once you get that first coat on, that's half the battle. And then your second coat, your color is much more vivid. Now, if you think that that pink is too dark, okay, you can add a drop of white to it. You did get white. But the first coat, I like to keep it dark, so there's not that big a contrast between the purple and the pink. And now I'm going over it a second time, and you could see the difference in the color. Now, if you're not getting solid enough coverage on your petals, you can take the middle of the petal and kind of go this way with it. But don't do it in the crevice, because then you'll fill in the crevices, and you don't want to fill in the crevices. You want to keep that purple in the crevices. If you do fill in the crevices, you can always take a small brush, and you can go back and you could paint the purple back in those crevices. I see here I could probably put a little purple back in. Okay, a little bit more. And each time you do it, it gets brighter and brighter. Now, if I hit the green, it's okay. The dry brushing colors will cover it, or you go back and just touch it up with some more of the dark green before you start dry brushing over the center. Did you see how it's getting brighter and brighter each time I do it? Now, this one is quite bright, so I might have added a little drop of white. I'm going to put some white in my palette. And I'm going to pick up, well, let me finish with this color first. Okay, so I'm now going to pick up some white in my brush. So all I do is pick up a little bit of white like so, blend it into the brush on the paper towel, and then go back to the pink and blend the two together so that I get a lighter color on there. And let's see if this is, yeah, well, that's a little bit too white. See it down there on the bottom? Might be a little bit too white. So go back and pick up a little bit more of the pink And I only mix them on the paper towel. And when I do something, when anybody does something, no two pieces ever come out alike. I can do, 2 or 3 of these in a row and they'll all be a little bit different. There's no right or wrong. It's art. And when you like it and you're satisfied with it, then you stop. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. It's your piece. So again, I put a little dot of white in my brush and some pink. See, I'm getting lines going across, and when I get those lines, I have a tendency, I'll go down and I'll just pull them this way so I don't have such lines from the brush. It's getting a little brighter now. See it here? It's getting much brighter. So you can continue doing this until you're satisfied with it. I don't have to take it to the point of where you want it, and how that one is. I just wanted you to see how to do it, because mine is lifting a little bit, which means it's wet. So that's why you really should let it dry between coats when you do dry brushing. But that gives you the idea. Okay, and this one, I guess I went further and further on it. But I'm going to stop on this one now. And I'm going to pick up the brush that I had the green in, and I'm going to put a little bit of this lighter green. It's called chartreuse in my brush. And I didn't wash the brush because I want the combination of the 2 greens in the brush. So because the dark green is in the brush, I'm just picking up a little bit of the light green. See, and I'm getting a little lighter green there. And I'm going to dry brush. Flat side of the brush. Always use the flat side of the brush. Never point in. See my brushes, how they turn, how they're on an angle? That's because I use the flat side of the brush. And this way you hit only the raised areas. If you have too much paint in your brush, you're going to get it in the crevices. And always turn your brush around and use both sides of your brush, because if you've taken the paint out properly on your paper towel, you can use both sides of the brush. All right, so that's not too much of a difference. So I'm going to pick up some more of the chartreuse. And now this time, I have a little lighter color. I'm going to do it a second time. See the difference in the color now on this edge? And again, the same thing with the center, is you just keep doing it until you're satisfied with it. And I think what I did on this is I just did so much and then I went a lot lighter in the middle. So if I just keep, no more dark green, I just keep using the chartreuse color, which is the lighter green. And each time I do it, it gets a little bit lighter. And then I'll stop and I'll go back with just the chartreuse and do the center to make the center stand out a little bit more. You see that? So I did the center, and you could do it a couple of times. Okay, all right, so I'm going to stop on that. Now I'm putting my brushes in the water because I'm not going to be using these brushes anymore. I have another brush, and like I said, I have different brushes than you do. I use large brushes, so you don't have to sit here and watch me for an hour, just doing something that I show you, and it's very simple for you to do. Okay, so now I'm going to do white, and you really have to have your brush nice and clean for the white. Okay, because to go from the green to the white, you'd have a light green, and we don't want that. So I pick up some white in my brush. I wipe it out, both sides of the brush on the paper towel. Just don't do this. You have to wipe it. You're like paleting the color into the hairs of the brush. Okay, and now I put a halo around the center. And it has a little bit too much paint in my brush. Flat side of the brush. You really want nothing in your brush. And even when you think you ran out of paint, just keep going around and around. Again, until you're satisfied with it and it looks the way you want it. You may think there's nothing in your brush, but there is. True dry brushing is, if you would properly dry brushing, you can almost see a powder of paint forming on the table in front of you. Okay, so that's a small amount. I'm going to do more. I'll do more over here. But I could let that dry, and I could do your edges. Now my edges, I came in on. I wanted my edges to have a little bit more white, so I feathered it in like so. All right, and you could even flip it down a little bit so you get that little wispiness onto the petals of the flower. And the reason I went away from the center is I'll give it a couple of seconds to dry, and then I'll go back to it. So I'll go all the way around this. Everything, when you dry brush, you do it at least twice. You could do it 5 times. That's up to you. And the drying time is just important. You have to make sure your colors are dry. And if you put too much paint in your brush, you're not going to be able to do one coat right after the other. You really have to let it dry. If you're applying your colors and it's very wet looking, you know you have too much paint in the brush. It should be very dry. I have a brush that's shedding. Okay, you get the idea. You can go around. This one I pulled in the color a little bit more, so I just came down onto my petals a little bit more like that. But the first time I did it, I just went around and did the outside edge. Then you can pull color down a little bit into that. Now I'm going to go back onto the center because I want my center to be, the white to be a little sharper. But you even need less on the center or it doesn't look right. So light hand, start out with a light hand. And see the second time what a difference it makes? And you could just keep going around until you like the way it looks. This one has a bigger white halo around it. So you spread it out a little bit more. Now I'm spreading it out. Okay, that's it. And again, I would go back here. Now on the second time around, look at the difference. All right, second time makes a big difference. And you can feather it down onto the petals. See what I mean about feathering? It's just like a little wispiness down on the edges. All right, so I'm not going to do the whole flower because you get the idea. I hope if you have any questions, you can always contact me. And I will answer any questions that you have. I hope you will take a look at some of my other videos that are on here on YouTube. There's, I think, over 40 videos that I have up there now. Also the back, don't forget to paint the back, and any color that you have left over, any color that you want to use, you can do the back, okay? And then after you're finished painting the whole entire piece, you can go back. Let's see if I can wash this brush out enough to use. Now this is the glitter that I use. It's Duncan's, which is now manufactured by Mako, and it's SG880 sparklers, crystal sparklers, brush on glitter. Okay, so you brush it on. It doesn't have to be applied with glue and sprinkling it on because that's so messy. Okay, so you just, as that brush's hairs are coming out again. Okay, so all you do is you paint it on a thin coat. And then once it dries, you'll be able to see the glitter. I can almost see it a little bit now, but it really needs to dry to see the glitter. I don't know if you can see it on this one. Yes, you can see it on this one, right? All right, so you put as much glitter on there as you want, but it's a thin coat. Don't put it on too heavy. I'm not sure if you put it on heavy, if it will stay white in areas, so just pull it out. Make sure that you pull it out. Okay, just one coat like that. You pull it out, you put it on, and there you go. And this is a very simple piece, just a little bit of dry brushing, and it's a pretty flower. Now, somebody asked me if this can be used in the garden as a stepping stone, and I said, you can put it in the garden, but I wouldn't step on it because it's ceramic and it will definitely break. And anything that you put outside, you should bring in below 32 degrees. And also make sure they're sealed. You can seal them with a spray or a paint-on sealer, which you can get on Amazon, or you can also get it at Michael's. And there's a Dunkin' paint-on sealer that you can use. It comes in gloss and it comes in matte. I believe that the glitter is a sealer, so if you put that on the whole piece, you probably wouldn't have to seal it. And every time you bring it in for the winter, before you put it out again, make sure that you clean it and reseal it again. I think it's best if you reseal the piece a second time, a third time, whatever, when you put them back out. And I think they'll last longer if you take care of them. I probably haven't done that with all my pieces. They're pretty good. They last pretty long outside. It depends where you have them. People have told me they can fade. Depends the sunlight that they're in and the exact area that they're in. But if you take care of them, they will last a long time. So I hope you enjoyed watching me paint this flower, and I hope to see you guys again. Have fun painting. Thank you.